about this in weeks past, I guess. I guess I can say that now. Before we get into the about the fifth week. But the encouragement that is given here. Now, when you go through these chapters, and again, we're not going to read those word for word through the class today. But when you go through them, you see, and we'll touch on, you'll see, the encouragement of the present tense, along with a little snippet, if you will, of the coming Messiah. Now, as we look at during the time that these events played out, it was several hundred years before Christ came to earth. So again, kind of sometimes begs the question of, okay, what good would it be for Ahaz to know about the coming Messiah? Well, and the simple answer to that, as we've talked about before, is that, it's really, in that frame of reference, in that context, it's basically no different than for us to be encouraged by the second coming of Christ. Okay? They were to look forward to the Messiah, which was going to unite nations, no more wars, but again, in that context, there's no more wars like what they're facing right now, as the Israelites being invaded or whatever by other countries or other people, things like that. That part wasn't going to be necessary anymore. And also God in what's coming up will use other nations to put Israel back online. So anyway, the chapters 7 through 12. Okay. So if you want to kind of glance at that, we'll hit little chunks of verses as we go along here. And we can see that God spoke through the prophets, and it was not always just condemnation and, there was that, the rebuking and all of that, but there was also, an encouragement to hold the line. That's what I see. Okay, hold the line, and in this case, again, hold the line, I'm going to send the Messiah, and, everything's going to work out. So, chapter 7, or actually, if you wanted to turn to 2 Kings, chapter 16, verse 5, kind of gives a little background here of the context in which we're looking at. Then Rezin, the king of Syria, Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to make war, and they besieged Ahaz, but could not overcome him. All right, so we see that, and then we see, as you read through here, that, again, they couldn't defeat him, but they laid siege to it. So they're pretty shaken up right here. And then Isaiah and his son show up to encourage And don't fear what these two leaders of these forces are going to do. And he says within 65 years, Ephraim will be broken. Now again, that's quite a ways in the distance, but again, I mean, you look at God's plan. I mean, it might be another 1,000 years or more before Christ comes back. Yet, we know he is. We're encouraged to remember that. And it may not happen in our lifetime. So, again, to me, this is a way of God saying, don't worry about it. I'm in control here. But the encouragement here is for Ahaz to have the faith. Be encouraged, have the faith, have the confidence, not in himself, not in his troops, not in the people of Israel, but who?
In God.
God, yes. So hang in there, Ahaz. Trying to stick to one pronunciation, I still messed it up. Okay. So, then the Lord spoke again in verse 10. Then the Lord spoke again to Ahaz, saying, ask a sign for yourself from the Lord your God. Make it as deep as Sheol or as high as heaven. He's actually asking for a sign. And he says, no, I'm not going to test the Lord. We got passages in the New Testament that, Jesus says to Satan in the wilderness that you're not to tempt God. So Ahaz says that, but he's being told to ask for a sign. And yet he refuses. So I don't know whether you call that irony or hypocritical or what, but so then here goes one of those, one of the many throughout the book of Isaiah. Verses that are prophesizing the coming Messiah. Okay? And it says, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son whose name will be Emmanuel. So, and before the child will even know right from wrong, the land, both of those kings that are putting siege to him are going to be no more. Okay, so in their frame of reference, that's, have no idea how soon this will be. Okay, and it's not a matter of trying to, God trying to trick him or anything like that. It's just simply saying, hey, those kings aren't in control. You're not in control. I'm in control. Okay, I got a plan for this.
It had to be, when he heard that, I'm sure it had to have been, in a way, it had to have been, how am I phrasing that? It would have been a way it would have built him up
Mhm.
to know, you know,
Yeah.
that, okay, yeah, so this is all gonna work out. No, you know, I can only control what I can control, but God is in control.
You know, to me, the way this is playing out and the way he's trying to encourage Ahaz, it's no different, and I'm, kind of repeating myself, but it's no different than, us being encouraged to look for the day of the Lord again. Be prepared. Jesus says that, be prepared. There's the parables and all of that. The New Testament is full of that. Be prepared. Don't get caught unaware or unprepared and have it, because it's going to come on you like a thief in the night. Okay, so Ahaz doesn't know, that this is going to take place a ways away, but this is his encouragement to tell him it is going to happen.
That was the word I was looking for.
Oh,
I couldn't think of the word encourage. Yeah,
okay.
it was encouraging for him.
Yeah, it's encouraging. So, but he refused. So as we go on in chapter 7, the Lord says he's going to call for Assyria and Egypt. And this is also what Ahaz thought and pleaded for himself, if I understand this correctly. And then it's going to be rough times for those who are against him in this. I hate when I'm looking right at this and read all this stuff and then my brain goes numb. Okay, but later on in history, what happens with the Assyrians and Israel and the Hebrews? Don't they go ahead and sack them themselves, right? Yeah. So, again, these things, they were always looking for allies when they only needed one ally. That was God. But, us humans, we try and do things ourselves and try and work things out ourselves and, forget about the one who can actually do something. Okay? So, chapter 8. Starts out, verse 1, Then the Lord said to me, Take for yourself a large tablet and write on it in ordinary letters. Swift is the booty, speedy is the prey, and I will take to myself faithful witnesses for testimony. Uriah the priest and Zechariah the son of... So I approached the prophetess, and she conceived and gave birth to a son. And the Lord said to me, Name him Maher Shalal-Baz. For before the boy knows how to cry out, my father or my mother, the wealth of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be carried away before the king of Assyria. So, again, here is, more encouragement that, these, your enemies are going to find out So, then Assyria will pass through. And again, we're going to be, there's always this, it's symbolic, really, or, no, that's not the word I'm thinking of. When these things happen, there's a cleansing, if you will, of the faithful versus the ones who are rebellious. And that's pretty much what's going to happen here, is that when Assyria comes through, the people that put their faith in those two kings, those two other kings, are going to be, consumed or whatever. And, but again, with Assyria going through there, even their plans are going to get taken out as well. So, but the whole thing here is to be, again, put your faith in God, not, hearsay or anything like that. He's going to always be a sanctuary, and that was a message back then, as it is now. Okay, and I brought this up before, but I can't help but when I see the wording that's in these books. Okay, I don't think we ever really talked about it before, though. Isaiah being one of the full manuscripts that were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? Okay, then we can take that, translate it, and look at what we have right here. It's the same. And it's really interesting to me when the text mentions, it's going to go on and mention what used to be, vineyards and this, that, and the other thing. It's going to be turned into briars, thorns and briars. Anybody ever seen a briar?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you spend any time in the South, and you walked in the wood lines or whatever, you've probably seen or felt a briar. So, I don't know of any briars that ever grow in the dry desert. Every time I've seen them, it's been a jungle, green, thick,
Yeah.
whatever.
You might find closer to thorns in the arid regions.
Yeah, maybe.
Short ones.
But briars, okay? And I only bring this up because, this was over this was about 3,000 years ago, pretty close. And the climate was obviously different than it is now. Okay. And the Lord goes on to tell them that the people that will be remain faithful, they will be, they're going to enjoy curds and honey. So, anyway, let me get back on track. I got off track there a little bit. Anybody have any other comments, questions? We move through here. We're just in chapter 8, going on to chapter 9. But again, Isaiah is, we mentioned this during the introduction, or at least I think we did, that it is the most quoted Old Testament book in the New Testament by the apostles. And you look at, again, all the references to the Messiah that's coming in their frame of reference, and the lessons that are being given here by God through Isaiah, that, to place their confidence in God. I mean, that's all the prophets really talked about that, but this one is the most quoted because, again, Isaiah intermingles the coming Messiah with the words of encouragement for the situation that they're in at this particular time. Again, and then, as we discussed before, the people should have been prepared when the Messiah actually came. And during the apostles' time, they reference this book a lot because this is showing that this was prophesied and Christ fulfilled these prophecies when he was here on earth. And so, yeah, you should have known, but you didn't. You hardened your heart. So, Isaiah goes on and says that the confidence should be in the Lord. You're not going to go and, seek this wisdom from, wizards or any kind of mediums or whatever whatever they were back then. Not go by hearsay, not go by rumors, not go by, well, in our modern time we call it conspiracy theories. And there's better days coming. We'll go to the start of chapter 9. In verse 1, but there will be no more gloom for her who was in anguish in earlier times. He treated the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali with contempt, but later on he shall make it glorious by the way of the sea and the other side of Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. Okay, so what does this sound like, or what does this sound like it's referring to? The mention of the Gentiles. All inclusive. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. Those who live in dark land, the light will shine on them. You shall multiply the nation. You shall increase their gladness. They will be glad in your presence, as with the gladness of the harvest, and men rejoice when they divide the spoil. You shall break the yoke of their burden and the staff upon their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor at the battle of Midian. For every boot of the booted warrior in battle tumult, and a cloak rolled in blood will be for burning, fuel for the fire. For a child will be born to us, a son will be given to us, and the government will rest on his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. And there will be no end to the increase of his government or peace on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and righteousness from then on forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will accomplish this. So, we talking about. I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, never heard of a man in the Bible being referred to as Mighty God, Prince of Peace. Christ our Lord. So, again, you know, Isaiah is preaching that good times are ahead. Be looking forward to those good times ahead. A good time when the Messiah will put everything on his shoulders. It says government there, but put everything on his shoulders, and there's going to be peace. You know, and what did he promise us? Life more abundant, right? You know, does that mean we're going to have, you know, fancy cars, big giant houses, and all that? Is that the type of life that he was talking about? No. No. We're not going to have the burdens that everybody else has to deal with because we have something better to look forward to. So the encouragement is there. For these people, it's just the same. Their encouragement is to hold the line and look forward to the coming Messiah. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and read more of chapter 9 here. The Lord sends a message against Jacob, and it falls on Israel, and the people know it. That is, Ephraim and the inhabitants of Samaria, asserting in pride and arrogance of the heart, the bricks have fallen down, but we will rebuild with smooth stones. Sycamores have been cut down, but we will replace them with cedars. Therefore the Lord raises against them adversaries from Rezin, and spurs their enemies on, the Arameans on the east and the Philistines on the west, and they devour Israel with gaping jaws. In spite of all this, his anger does not turn away, and his hand is still stretched out. So, you've got this arrogance again, you know, and humans haven't changed at all since then. You know, they're just saying, well, okay, well, we'll just, if it gets destroyed, we'll just rebuild it, and we'll rebuild it better than it was before. You know, taking that arrogance. And the Lord says that, that's not going to happen because it's going to be, you're going to be going through some war. But despite all of that, despite what's coming, and, you know, you can still take my hand. Any other comments on that? So, then you got Syria, chapter 10. Again, human nature hasn't changed. Assyria just thinks that they're just moving through here because they're such awesome warriors and they can do all of this themselves, not realizing that they are simply an instrument of God. Okay? And then here's the kicker, when God is finished with using Assyria for his purpose, then he's going to take care of them too. So Assyria, you can boast all you want about being great conquerors and all of that, but your days are numbered as well.
Jeff?
Yeah.
But it's interesting, probably, speculation, but, even if they heard what Isaiah was saying, that these other nations, they probably wouldn't care.
Mm-hmm.
Because, they had their own gods that they worshipped and whatnot. As we found out, in Jonah, when because he didn't want to go to Nineveh in Assyria. He wanted them to be toast. But, God does these things in his own time. But yeah, I don't, more than likely, they wouldn't even give Isaiah a second thought, even though he said God's going to take care of you, because they didn't believe in the Jewish God.
Right. They believed it was all, like you say, it was their gods and their abilities and their, smarts or whatever, their great military planning and all of that is the reason why they were able to conquer the way they did. But, they didn't give any credit to the one who really allowed them to do what they did. And that was because they were doing his will, not their own.
Yeah. Although it is interesting that that the Muslims and the Islamic nations, they actually they don't say that Jesus was the Son of God, but they did recognize him as a prophet. And I'm like, that's interesting. So at least they acknowledged his existence, I guess, in a way. But they couldn't see. They can't see that, the truth of who he was.
That's right, and I went off on a side trip when I was looking at all this, based on, I had this train of thought going based on this last week's events. I mean, it's not just one particular, but there was a lot of things that I was reading and all that, and it's been a while, so because it's not, I don't really take a whole lot of time studying other religions. The brother that taught me the Bible always said that you gotta know the Bible like a treasury agent knows the dollar bill. Okay, so when a counterfeit comes around, you're not studying how many different counterfeits there are. You're studying the true item so that you can recognize the counterfeit when it comes across. So, but I was curious with with Israel. Okay, Israel, Islam, kind of, they're, I hate to say it, but they're in kind of the same boat, basically. And oddly enough, they both recognize that Jesus actually lived. There's hardly anybody in this world that can deny that. There's just too much archaeological, textual, text, and evidence. But it was interesting because we know that in order to be a true Israelite, you have to be able to trace your lineage back to Abraham, right? And they do that now. No. All those records were destroyed when the Romans went through. And oddly enough, as I was looking through this, and you might know a lot more about this than I do, but I just did a cursory look at it. But, the Israelites were scattered, but they were really, besides those that were lost in Jerusalem during that time, during that siege of the Romans, the Romans basically purged a lot of them out of the land. There was one rebellion where there was estimated 580,000 Hebrews were wiped out, and escaped from here and there. So, it really, it's like, the old chalkboard and the nails type of thing. When I see or read or hear of somebody claiming that they're Christians, but yet still calling Israel God's people. To me, and I hope Mossad's not listening, okay? But to me, the Hebrew race is gone. It's gone. I mean, the ones that were in Europe, they were commingled with other Europeans. And so, yeah, I won't tell you why I was on that tangent, but the one day that I thought something would happen this week was the day that nothing happened. It was 9/11. We had water our water was gone out of our building for the whole week, and deal with that, and then some of the current events were pretty shocking, and yeah, so I was just kind of going through all of this, but anyway, let me get back, because I won't be here next week, but basically 11 and 12 talks about, again, that forecast, that hope that Isaiah is trying to bring is that one day, there'll be unification, and, there'll be people that are, that were outcast, but will be assembled from the four corners of the earth. Rivalries will cease, and all of that, and it's not, he's not predicting that Jesus is going to come and set up his earthly reign, or his earthly reign the way people thought he was going to. It's simply because, despite our backgrounds, despite our national origin, things like that, we can still come and be united as Christians. And that's where we should put our hope. And God, to them, at that time, God was going to bring salvation. And if you read chapter 12, it's short, but it's just, it's praise to God is what it is.
In chapter 10, verse 20, he explains, Isaiah explains, he said, "In that day, the remnant of Israel and the survivors of the house of Jacob will no more lean on him who struck them, but will lean on the Lord, the Holy One of Israel in truth. A remnant will return, the remnant of Jacob, to the mighty God. For though your people Israel be as the sand of the sea, only a remnant of them will return. Destruction is decreed, overflowing with righteousness. For the Lord God of hosts will make a full end as decreed in the midst of all the earth." So,
once the Messiah comes, there will be no need for the chosen people, because they were chosen to bring forth the Messiah.
yeah.
After that, once it's fulfilled, we can all be children of God. Simplifying it. Yes, sir?
I can't remember where it's at, but it actually talks about that in Matthew, about how Christ said there was a chosen people, and then because of what they've done, they're no longer the chosen. And the Pharisees heard this and were sad. So I don't know if we're trying to verse for it, but there's
there's that. I mean, and you can, the book of Hebrews is, talks about that as well. Makes the makes the case for who's a better priest, who's a better sacrifice, so forth and so on. And the necessity for God's people, for God to watch out for them, and their mission is done. And so, yeah, regardless of what happens, I read once about who's the in crowd. People have different ideas of who the in crowd is. Okay? You know, social media, all that stuff. So you want to be part of the in crowd? But guess what? We're the in crowd. The difference is we're not trying to, we shouldn't be trying to shun people because they're not a part of our crowd. We should be welcoming them in. All right, thank you. I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, Jeff. Have a safe trip.